Here's to holiday traditions, the ones that started as a quick laugh but are now irreplaceable. Here's to the recipes that require Grandma's mixing bowl because they just won't taste the same without it. The Chinette brand believes in spending more time on traditions and less time cleaning up. With the Chinette Crystal, Comfort, and Classic collections, we can help make your holiday celebrations better for years to come. Here's to mixing timeless traditions with a few new ones. Here's to us, all of us. To find out more, visit mychinette.com.
Judy was boring.
Hello.
Then Judy discovered ChumbaCasino.com.
It's my little escape.
Now Judy's the life of the party.
Oh, baby, mama's bringing home the bacon.
Whoa, take it easy, Judy. The Chumba life is for everybody. So go to ChumbaCasino.com and play over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Welcome, friends. It's the Movie Film Podcast. Movie Film Podcast. Enjoy the show. Zachy and Brian are talking about the movies. Movie Film Podcast on the radio.
Welcome to Movie Film. This is episode 278, brought to you by Mr. Boy Productions. I am Zachy Hassan. I'm here with Brian Hall.
Hey, how's it going, Zachy?
Well, I was about to say, I've had a pretty chill week. I would imagine you've had a pretty busy week.
Yeah, so as everybody knows, my wife and I got married back in August, but we did it as a very, very small event. So there was really only like parents, siblings, and maybe a handful of other people. And what we wanted to do, because we have family and friends, on the West Coast of the U.S., the East Coast, Federica has a big, family contingent in Europe. We thought, well, maybe we do almost like a world tour kind of thing. And so kicking off that world tour this weekend, we have our wedding reception, the West Coast edition. And so, yeah, it's been a lot of prep. A member of her family has graciously opened up their house to us. So we had to go in there and do like a tour, see where we're going to put the caterer. The photographer wanted to know how low the ceilings were, like it's a lot of that, Costco runs, picking up lots of things. So it's been a lot of that.
Now, this is going to be like Saturday Night Live for you. So you have to do it exactly the same way in every time zone. you have to, the same one-liners, the same jokes at each other's expense, everything. You have to time it exactly.
That had not occurred to me. I think the tones are going to be very different also, not in a good or bad way, but I think this is like a real LA at a house. Don't worry about it. You can wear sneakers kind of thing. And I think what we're talking about is like the East Coast will probably be in like a rented room, and it'll probably have like a different sort of feel to it, more tables, kind of a thing. So, which is kind of cool, I mean, you want to shake it up a little bit. It's like Fish, every night they got a different set list.
Okay, boomer.
Or is that Gen X?
Yeah, that's more Gen X. No, but like boomer is like all-inclusive old person terminology.
That's true. And I did get called a boomer recently, as people will remember at the Stop Making Sense screening. So
I just got called Gramps on Twitter earlier this week.
What?
So, I'll tell you about it in a little while. Okay, when we get there. But
Gramps. Wow.
Gramps.
All right.
I'm officially in Gramps territory now.
Okay.
But other than party planning, what else has been going on with you?
Well, I'll go through this briefly, but I went and visited my parents in Oklahoma for a wedding, and we, at night, we're trying to find some things to watch that we could all enjoy. And I just found it kind of fascinating. So I thought I'd really quickly mention a funny thing that it was funny to me, at least, watching or trying to watch some movies down there. First of all, I rewatched Killers of the Flower Moon because my mom and I had both read the book, and I don't.
Seems like the appropriate setting for that, right?
I mean, yeah. I mean, a couple of years ago when I was visiting them, I literally went to that downtown street set, the outdoor set. So it was kind of cool to have seen that 2 years ago and then see it on screen and go, oh wow, it's like a major location for the movie. But yeah, we were very invested in the story and interested in it. And I don't know if she would have gone on her own. It was so long, and I think it was too long for my dad. And so we went together, and it was a real nice moment for us, just sort of the book. I read the book after I saw it the first time, and if people were captivated by that story and interested in it, I would still recommend reading the book because it's kind of the story from a different angle, and it made me appreciate the movie even more. I was like, wow, I mean, they literally took almost everything in that movie as a detail from the book. I didn't see a lot of invention. I mean, some of it is imagined when you weren't in the room or didn't have a letter, but so many details. It was pretty staggering. And I just think it's a really towering movie. And I have a hard time saying I enjoyed it, but I think it was really well done. And I recommend it for people who still haven't checked it out. But when we were at home, my dad wanted to watch Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. And I was like, yeah, I want to see that too. We watched it. I can't tell you how captivated he was by this movie. He was so into it. And
wow.
my brother and his girlfriend were coming in later. We had to go to the airport that night to pick them up. And we realized they were like landing as the movie was going to end. So it was like, how long do we have? So he was like putting on his shoes as the movie was wrapping up. I mean, he was like in it. And I was too. I was like, man, this movie is so good. So then the next night, he's like, all right, let's do Indiana Jones 5. I haven't seen that. So we started it. 15 minutes in, fell asleep. I was like,
wow.
Oh, all right. Well, so then no problem. It's been a long day. So we start the next night and we pick it up and he goes, wait, I don't remember this. I don't remember. So I basically backtrack it to like 5 minutes in, and so we started again. I don't remember if he fell asleep. I think he might have fell asleep again. I think few people did. Third night, they're like, all right, let's try Indy one more time. And I kid you not, we're like 30 minutes in and the tuk-tuk car chase thing is happening.
Sure.
And my dad actually goes, I get it. Because it's too long. And then, no joke, he goes, after that, they sort of have this squabble, Indy and Helena and the kid. And she's like, halfway across the world. I don't know where this thing is. I just want to find And my dad goes, 3 strikes, you're out.
Wow. Really?
Turned it off. Yes.
Wow.
And I was
okay.
like, okay. And it immediately is like, I want to mention this on the show. I mean, just to be fair, we said we don't think it's a perfect film. We don't even think it's one of the best indie films, but we're like, yeah, we're okay with it. But to acknowledge all the sides, I was like, wow, my dad gave about 45 minutes and he was done.
He gave it the old college try, and he tapped out.
You could have
Respect.
another yeah, no. Well, I was going to say you could have a conversation too about the circumstances of watching it at home.
Sure.
Like if you had gone to the theater and stuck it out and seen the whole thing, maybe it'd be like, well, it's not one of my favorites, but yeah, I mean, the ending was kind of gonzo and fun and, it's a nice little ending.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, yeah, to like I said, to share all sides reactions to that movie, I felt I had to share that story.
See, I saw it 3 times in the theater.
Uh-huh.
And then just recently I watched it at home with my brother and he thoroughly enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And in fact, just randomly the other day, he was like, man, I was thinking about Dial of Destiny and the way it ended. And it's just so perfect, So it's, if nothing else, this conversation just drives home how there is a vast array of, there's a wide spectrum of reactions to this movie.
Exactly that. Yep. So, and then I guess just for posterity, because I watched it, I felt like I should mention I saw Five Nights at Freddy's. So
good. Okay. You did that on our behalf. Thank you for that.
I mean, it was a movie that I was like, I know that's a thing. Like that's a video game, right? And then it comes out and makes 80 million in its opening weekend. I was like, okay. And
I mean, and by the way, Brian, 80 million while it was available to stream on Peacock.
Yes. Which has been sort of a debate, right? Like if that simultaneous release at home and in theaters diminishes, box office. But
I just take that as a giant FU to Peacock. Honestly, that's my
I mean,
takeaway.
it's certainly one way to look at it, right? I mean, not a lot of people may have Peacock, so. But also, I mean, this is a movie. If I can sound like an old person going back, I guess call me a boomer again. But like, a lot has been written or tweeted, whatever you want to call it, about the younger generation not going to the theater, right? And so it's kind of interesting that the core audience for this property showed up. I mean,
right.
I don't know. Maybe I don't know. They didn't seem to show up for some of the other bigger movies, indie, this summer. So
Dead
maybe
Reckoning.
if you give them what they want, and which I've said this before for other things, but this was another one of those instances where I felt like, oh, I'm on the outside of this. Like, I don't know what this is, and this is big,
And guess what, Brian? There's going to be a lot more of that as more time goes by.
Yeah, 100%. And just to give it a little review, it's all right. I was actually kind of intrigued by it the first half.
Yeah.
And then the second half, I was like, oh, this is just kind of silly. And but I mean, the audience seemed to like it. And it was funny too. I had this weird experience where it was like me and two other friends. And then out of nowhere, like 30 kids, well, that's a lot. Maybe like more like 20 kids just walked into the theater all together. I don't know if it was like a school or like a youth group or like some sort of thing, but it was like they were from somewhere. They had like similar shirts. And it was kind of funny watching them because they were like on their phones, but also watching the movie and like laughing and talking through it, but like enjoying the movie their own way. And I really did feel like an old man observing, like I was behind like double-sided glass, like observing how the youth watch movies.
I'm getting all twitchy and pissed off just hearing you say that, honestly.
If it had been a certain movie, I probably would have been frustrated. But it was weird because I wasn't invested in this movie very much. And it was interesting watching them enjoy it in their way. Like they were enjoying it. So I was like, I don't know. It's like I say, it felt like I got to sit in on some sort of experiment or something.
It's, Hamza went to see it with his friends and he was like, yeah, it was all right. But I was talking to him about sort of, the ubiquity of TikTok and sort of these short form streaming services. And he's telling me this. He's like, it's like rewiring people's brains to the point where I don't think future generations will be able to sit still and watch a movie.
I totally believe that. I mean, I see that with people even my age, and you're just now, it's like that, similar to that phenomenon. I don't know if you have an Apple Watch, but like it gives you a little tap on your wrist when you get a text or something like that. And when you don't have it on, you still sometimes will feel that tap, like a phantom tap.
Wow.
And so I feel like there's all these sort of like new bodily responses we're like getting. And one of them is just to reach for your phone every 10 minutes, and just pick it up, tap it, even if you just put it back down. Right. And so it used to be the movies where, you turn all of that off. But I think I'm noticing more and more people feeling more comfortable, even just doing that quick little tap to look at their phone. Oh, I got a text. What does it say? Let me read it real fast. More than I've ever seen before. And so I'm certain with like younger generations, that's going to be more built in, but I'm noticing it like creep in more and more. So,
well, that's depressing.
Yeah. Are you a type of person who can do something while you watch a movie or TV show at home?
It depends on what I'm watching. Like at night, if I can put on like a sitcom and just be like playing
like
solitaire.
Frasier or Simpsons or something.
Yeah. And I like, fubbing or solitaire, sort of how I, unwind at the end of the day. And I can pay attention to both. But like, if it's like a movie, then no, I'm like, I need to focus,
Yeah. Like if I miss something, I rewind it, like one line. I'm like, no, like I have to ingest all of this. Like I can't miss a piece of it. So
yeah.
But you hear a lot about shows that are even sort of like the writers even are aware, like people are probably doing their laundry while they watch this, so that they write it in such a way where certain important things are pronounced or loud, or someone shouts something, or just to make sure everyone's getting the beats, the important beats.
That's right.
But I just can't do that.
Well, on that note, I mean, did you watch The Killer at home or in the theater?
I watched it at home. I would have loved to have seen it in the theater. I don't remember seeing it on my Regal app, but I checked out David Fincher's The Killer, which I was really excited. sort of been in this Fincher. Oh, I know why. Because I've been listening to the Blank Check podcast, and they're going through David Fincher's work, so it's making me like go revisit all his stuff. And yeah, so I was excited. New David Fincher movie dropping into my living room. Have you checked it out?
I'm hoping to over Thanksgiving.
Yeah. It's one of those movies where when it ended, it's very vignette-y. It's based on a comic book, and it's sort of like, okay, this thing happens and it sets off something that this assassin must now do. So it's like, okay, he has to go to the lawyer, chapter 2, the lawyer, chapter 3, the brute.
Right.
And so it's these vignettes of him going after these people. And it's funny because at the end, I started to think, yeah, like, but to what end? Like it almost just felt like an exercise for David Fincher to just make something that looked cool, like an interesting sort of premise for him to play with, and then come up with some cool sequences. But the more I thought about it, it didn't leave me. I started thinking about it more and more, and I read a little bit about it, and I was noticing how much like corporations, factor into everything. Like like it's not like an assassin needs Q now from like James Bond to get the thing he needs. He just needs Amazon and a locker, and they don't have to deliver it anywhere specific, and
right.
And like if he wants to do a stakeout somewhere, he just hires a WeWork, office. And
Right.
I was like, oh, that's interesting. And so I started thinking about it more and more, and just he has kind of a code, and then you start to realize like maybe this code is he even like that good at what he does? Like there's, it's kind of interesting. I wonder if on a rewatch, I would even like pick up on its frequency a little bit more. But all that to say, I did enjoy it because I just enjoy watching David Fincher movies because they're so exacting and they really soothe the visuals really soothe my brain. Honestly, when it was over, I was like, oh, that was John Wick by David Fincher.
Perfect. You've got me sold.
I mean, that's what it is. And it's there, right down to it occurred to me when there's this really brutal hand-to-hand fight. But it's, John Wick, I love the action and the way it's captured in those movies. But this is so Finchery down to like the colors and the lighting and the, how the camera is exactly where it should be and it doesn't move because Fincher doesn't have to move it. And I was like, oh, I love this. This is John Wick by David Fincher. So yeah, it was one of those things that kind of grew on me as I ruminated on it. But with his other movies, Fight Club punched me in the face, and I'm still feeling the sting all these years later. And I rewatched Zodiac, and I was like, this is a masterpiece. And so this one I would say is like upper middle, like David Fincher. But if you like David Fincher, I think it's still worth checking out.
Nice.
So yeah, what about you? What have you been?
Well, I it's been a busy couple of weeks just because with school and everything. But I have just watched a couple shows actually. One is the latest joint from Taylor Sheridan, which is Lawmen, Bass Reeves.
Right.
And this initially was meant to be like part of the Yellowstone verse.
Okay.
It was going to be a spin-off of 1892 or I forget the date.
1883, yeah.
1883, thank you. And that's what it was when they first announced it. It was 1883 Bass Reeves. And Bass Reeves is a real guy. He was one of the first black deputy U.S. marshals in the entire country.
Yeah, I was reading a little bit about this. Maybe it was when that big interview he did. He's talking about upcoming stuff. This really has me intrigued.
Yeah, so he's a real life figure, and I remember hearing about it being a Yellowstone spinoff, and I'm like, it reminded me of that Tarzan movie where you got Sam Jackson as a real life guy who's like amazing.
Oh,
and you're like, but he's a great supporting character for Tarzan. Like that's what it felt like to me.
Right.
So I'm glad they made it its own thing, and I suppose you could tie it in with Yellowstone. I mean, there's nothing that says you can't. But the show stars David Oyelowo as Bass Reeves, and it's just such a. I mean, it's such an interesting story, knowing that it's real. This guy went from being a slave to being a U.S. Marshal.
Wow!
Like what an American story, right?
Yeah.
And David Oyelowo is great, and honestly, he's just so compelling a presence that I watched the first 5 episodes or so, and it's just, if you like, and I know you do, you've liked those specifically those period set Sheridan
Uh-huh.
shows. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't like this one too.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. Yeah, I just mentioned Yellowstone. I met with someone and we were talking about shows we watch. And it's funny because sometimes I'm not sure how Yellowstone is perceived
Hmm.
by people. Like I don't know if they look at it as, oh yeah, that's pretty solid, that's good, or if it's like, oh, that's really hokey and dumb, and so it's kind of interesting getting reactions because from some people that I think would poo-poo it, they're like, oh, I love that. I'm like, oh, interesting.
Right.
And just recently someone was like, ugh, when I mentioned it. I was
Really?
like, oh, interesting. So, but yeah, I
But
absolutely understand.
did they expand on the ich?
We actually a little bit. I think
Okay.
Yellowstone specifically, they were talking about like machismo overload,
Okay,
and
that's fair.
honestly, I think all of it's fair. I mean, I could critique the show myself, but like
Yeah.
somehow it just whatever it's doing entertains me. And
I
like you said, the period one specifically, I've really enjoyed.
Yeah, what I think of, like, I like Yellowstone on the same level as Dallas.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's like a soap opera for me.
Yeah, and I don't say that ironically, Brian. I love me some Dallas.
Yes, you do. I know.
So I'm like that when the show was first announced, I was like, oh, this is like Dallas.
Right.
I get it. Kevin Costner is Jock Ewing. I totally get it.
Mhm.
Beth is Jr. It's
Right.
uh, and so it works on that level. The prequel shows to me work on a whole different level
Yes.
because they feel truly epic,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And so I like that all of these things exist in the same sandbox. But yeah, I put them almost in two different bins.
Well, I'm really happy to hear that this one's good because I'm ready. I'm ready for some more. When my favorite one I think so far might have been 1923, which I think you
1920 was
predicted, by
great.
the way.
Yeah,
And yeah, no, I'm itching for some more. So I'm really happy to hear this.
I mean Harrison Ford, you can tell he's sinking his teeth into
Uh
1923,
huh. Yep.
right?
Yep.
Like that's, I mean, and not to say that he's like phoning it in anywhere else, but I mean, it really feels like, man, this is the type of role he's aged into now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Another show with a big budget that's on streaming. It hasn't dropped yet, but I can talk about it since the embargo is up. Is Monarch: Legacy of Monsters?
What is this?
Wow. Oh, you've never heard of this? Wow. I thought you
No.
were giving me like a dramatic pause. So
No.
this is on Apple TV Plus. It is a spin-off prequel / sequel to the legendary Monsterverse.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. So wait, this is not like going to theaters or?
No, it's a series
Uh-huh.
that is about the Monarch organization that's in all of those movies.
Sorry, I think I missed series part. I just heard prequel. Okay, I
Oh,
see. I
okay.
see. So it's like
Yeah.
Agents of Shield.
It's funny that you say that because as it happens, I said that in my review. I said there's
Hey.
like a Agents of Shield vibe, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in a couple ways because just like Agents of Shield, initially I think people were like, "Ooh boy, bring on Iron Man, Captain America," and then you're like, "Wow, it's a bunch of people in suits."
Right. Right.
Um, and I think once people got over that hump, the people who stuck around were like, "Oh, it's actually not a bad show," right?
Mm.
I think Monarch, in similar vein, like you get occasional glimpses of Godzilla,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
but if you're expecting just hot kaiju on kaiju action, uh, you're not gonna get much of that. I kind of had my suspicions about that going in, so I was actually quite pulled in by the story. It's actually told in two big chunks that cut back and forth. So you have a 1950s set storyline where you have essentially the three people who founded Monarch,
Okay.
and then they are played by primarily Wyatt Russell, who he plays a military guy named Shaw, and then you have Anders Holm from what's he from? Oh, Workaholics. You ever see Workaholics?
No, I know it, but no, I've
he's
not
like
watched
the normal one from Workaholics.
That's right.
You know, he's not Adam Devine. He's not the other guy. He's like
right.
So he plays actually the younger version of John Goodman's character from Kong Skull Island.
Okay.
Right. And then you have Mari Yamamoto, who plays, essentially it's kind of like a love triangle between the three of them. So that's like in the 1950s. Okay. And so kind of like you see it intertwining with things that we've seen in the films. And then we jump ahead to 2015. So it's right after the 2014 Godzilla movie.
Mm-hmm.
And Wyatt Russell's character is now played by Kurt Russell.
That's great.
Which is perfect, obviously, because the resemblance is uncanny. But like, both ends of that story are compelling. And then there's like a thing about like, the aftermath of what happened with Godzilla and stuff. So it's kind of weaving together these two threads of story. I find the 1950s stuff is very compelling. I find the present day stuff is less compelling, except when we're on Kurt Russell.
Interesting.
Because there's like these other characters who are tied in. I don't want to spoil anything, but they're doing this stuff where like you have a whole bunch of new characters introduced, and they're doing like a Lost style like flashbacks to stuff that happened to these characters earlier. And I'm like, I don't care about any of this, man. Just get to the monster hunting. Right. So I don't even need to see Godzilla, but I want what I'm seeing to be connected to that at least,
Yes, totally.
Right? And so that kind of I found slightly grating.
So all those flashbacks are like, oh, the one time he stole a candy bar from a drugstore, and it's supposed to inform something about him. Like, unrelated.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, it felt like that at least. Now, I mean, I've seen 8 of the 10, so maybe in the last 2, suddenly it all weaves together, and you're like, oh, that's what that flashback meant.
Yeah, that candy bar was radioactive. Yeah,
right, exactly. That's where Godzilla came from.
Yeah.
So that's how it happened. Now I liked the show, but it's like I'm almost like issuing the caveat, like, yeah, if you want monsters fighting each other, there's like 4 movies for that.
Okay.
This is a story set within that world, and the thought I had just watching it, I'm like, Kirk Douglas also, but Kurt Russell is a movie star even when it's not a movie.
Dude, yeah, he's just. It's weird we don't see more or talk about him more, because he is. I mean, ever since he's a little boy, he's just always been there, always been liked. He's always, right? Like almost like Kevin. I feel like Kevin Bacon is more front and center when it feels like Kurt Russell could be just as much, in that same way.
I mean, it's just the guy is just he just oozes charisma, So it's like it's worth watching just for him. Like the present day stuff. Every time Kurt Russell's not on screen, everybody should be asking, "Where's Kurt Russell?"
Right.
But yeah, this is 10 episodes. It's going to be on Apple TV Plus, so you can check that out.
All right.
But why don't we take a little break? We'll come back. We got some listener letters.
Here's to holiday traditions, the ones that started as a quick laugh but are now irreplaceable. Here's to the recipes that require Grandma's mixing bowl because they just won't taste the same without it. The Chinette brand believes in spending more time on traditions and less time cleaning up. With the Chinette Crystal, Comfort, and Classic collections, we can help make your holiday celebrations better for years to come. Here's to mixing timeless traditions with a few new ones. Here's to us, all of us. To find out more, visit mychinette.com.
With Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Judy was boring.
Hello.
Then Judy discovered ChumbaCasino.com.
It's my little escape.
Now Judy's the life of the party.
Oh, baby, mama's bringing home the bacon.
Whoa, take it easy, Judy. The Chumba life is for everybody. So go to ChumbaCasino.com and play over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
All right, we're back, and hey, we got some listener letters. We got a lot of feedback, Brian, on your viewing of Psycho 2.
Oh, wow. Okay.
You scratched some kind of an itch for folks. So here's an extended letter we got from Tyler Kloster, who says, I got excited to hear the talk about Psycho 2, a movie I've long loved, on the most recent episode, and glad to hear that Brian enjoyed it for what it was. I hope you can forgive me for a few quick hit comments about the Psycho series. And I thought, Brian, you might appreciate this because you're a little psycho right now, right?
Yeah, you could say that. We all go a little mad sometimes.
We all do. Exactly. There you go. I concede that the synopsis for Robert Bloch's novel Psycho 2 sounds terrible. Remember I was telling you, it's like Norman escapes from custody and starts murdering people. But I actually
Hollywood
found
or
it
something, right?
In Hollywood, exactly, because he's like all the slasher movies that were inspired by him.
Yeah.
To which I say, well, you were inspired by Ed Gein.
Right.
Stole, borrowed. What's the difference? But Tyler says, I actually found it pretty good and a better reading experience than Bloch's Psycho, with one of the greatest twists I've ever read. However,
dude, I'm already. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I was gonna say I'm already writing it down to order it.
Okay. Hey, look at that. I was about to spoil the twist for you, but now I won't. Never mind.
Oh shoot. Well, I don't want to deprive the audience, but.
No. In case somebody listening, then it's fine.
I'm going to read it. Okay, sorry.
He says, however, the less said about his final novel in the series, Psycho House, in which the Bates Motel and house are recreated as a tourist trap, complete with an animatronic Norman and Mother, the better.
What?
That sounds awful.
Yeah.
So there we go. He says there was some pretty loud rumors going around shortly before Gus Van Sant's remake came out in 1998 that despite how the film was marketed, it would only be a shot-for-shot remake of Hitchcock's film Up Through the Shower Scene, which would play out much differently and the movie would go off in its own direction from there. Obviously, that didn't happen, but I think it would have made for a more interesting film, and it's sort of what the 5th season of Bates Motel ended up doing.
Interesting.
Again, that is a terrible movie, so nobody should watch it. Don't encourage that kind of nonsense.
Yeah. No, I remember that when I saw it, and then that's kind of forgot about it. Really.
Yeah. And then he says, not that my recommendation means all that much. Tyler, I disagree with that. Of course, it means a lot. Brian just pre-ordered the book, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
But if Brian did like Psycho 2, I would encourage him to complete the trilogy with Psycho 3, which I think is even better than Psycho 2.
I'm happy to hear you say that because I never expected this to happen, but I am in it. I am in the Psycho verse right now, and I actually was sad that there wasn't another one. So, okay. I mean, of course there was another one, but I thought it wasn't worth checking out.
Right.
So
he says,
you've given me permission.
I'm what I will say is I think personally, I think 2 is better, but I do think the third one is worth watching, if nothing else, because Anthony Perkins directed it. And so you get to really, to me, that's like Leonard Nimoy directing Star Trek. It's like, this is his take on this character that he's most associated with,
Right.
He says, I concede Zacky's point that the sequels are unnecessary, but as long as they do exist, I think they make a nifty little trilogy. You should check out Roger Ebert's positive review for Psycho 3, and if you're intrigued, give the movie a watch. Psycho 4, however, despite the 4 in the title, pulls a Halloween 2018 and erases all the sequels and is really only worth watching if you want to see E.T.'s Henry Thomas play a teenage Norman, which I think is firing some neurons in Brian's head right now, just that phrase.
Yep. I remember you mentioning that, actually.
You're like, go on. That one too. I'm like, you know what? It's the last time Anthony Perkins played Norman.
Yeah.
That's something, And then he concludes, lastly, I've always been struck by how depressing and run down Bates Motel and the Bates house look in color in the later movies, even allowing for the passage of time. I know that Hitchcock's Psycho hardly has the beautiful black and white cinematography of a Citizen Kane or Casablanca, or even Hitch's earlier films since he used a production crew of his TV show, but it still looks a world apart from the bleak and grimy world of the 80s films. I hadn't thought about that. I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
And I still say you should watch the TV show, Brian, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, that almost feels like the obvious sort of, when I was saying I wanted to watch more, if it's good, worth checking out. I like verifying it.
Now, Tyler, Brian, he also chimed in on our Jaws 2 commentary track, which we just dropped.
Okay.
He says, I'm quite ashamed that I know this, but not only does the Jaws 2 novelization establish that this is the mate of the original, but shortly before Brody kills her, literally moments before, from what I remember, she gives birth to the shark that will then go on to be the one in Jaws the Revenge, making it personal. Also,
now
this
go,
part
my son, do my bidding.
Avenge me!
Yeah.
Also, that movie's novelization establishes, this is the Jaws the Revenge novelization, establishes that its shark is acting under the influence of a voodoo spell cast against Mike Brody, which, quote, explains why it travels from the New England waters down to the Bahamas. And I'm not making any of that up. And Tyler, I know you're not making that up, but dear Lord, I wish you were making that up.
Remember when like voodoo was like the catch-all excuse for things for a while? Like I remember, no one's going to remember this, I pray. Weekend at Bernie's 2, you know, they needed somehow to have like this dead body do more things. So that like some voodoo curse was put on him. So whenever music played, he would do this jaunty little walk and he would like move on his own. And then remember, famously, Groundhog's Day, the reason that he's reliving the day, original scripts had an excuse. And there was some sort of like curse. I don't know if it's voodoo or whatever, but like some sort of curse put on him by an ex-girlfriend. And Ramis wisely was like, who cares? You know, like it's going to happen. He's going to learn a lesson. It's going to end, you know?
Rightly so, turns out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely spent a lot of time as a kid worrying that somebody had a doll of me that they could stick pins in. That's what
like Temple
said.
of Doom and
like Temple of Doom. Yeah, that was a not inconsequential amount of worrying when I was a child.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah.
But anyway, let's take another break. We got some headlines to discuss. We'll talk about them right after this.
Here's to holiday traditions, the ones that started as a quick laugh but are now irreplaceable. Here's to the recipes that require Grandma's mixing bowl because they just won't taste the same without it. The Chinette brand believes in spending more time on traditions and less time cleaning up. With the Chinette Crystal, Comfort, and Classic collections, we can help make your holiday celebrations better for years to come. Here's to mixing timeless traditions with a few new ones. Here's to us, all of us. To find out more, visit mychinette.com.
It is Ryan here, and I have a question for you. What do you do when you win? Like, are you a fist pumper, a woohooer, a hand clapper, a high fiver? I kind of like the high five, but if you want to hone in on those winning moves, check out Chumba Casino. At ChumbaCasino.com, choose from hundreds of social casino-style games for your chance to redeem serious cash prizes. There are new game releases weekly, plus free daily bonuses. So don't wait. Start having the most fun ever at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
And we are back, and a little bit of sad news just to start out this segment. But I mean, it's been a little while, but I feel like how can we not mention the fact that Matthew Perry passed away?
Yeah, that was like, I think you sent me that I saw that from you, and it was just this shocking thing to read out of nowhere on my phone. I mean, it was so crazy. Yeah,
it's one of those things. So he died on October 28th. So it's like I said, it's been a couple weeks. It's been interesting because this week, as we're recording, the Friends actors have now started paying tribute to him on social media.
Yeah.
And it was sort of like they needed some time to, process it, I suppose. He was 54 years old. He had, of course, been dealing with substance abuse issues for decades. I mean, gosh, since his teenage years, basically.
Yeah. Have you read his book?
I have the audio version of it, and I listened to a portion of it when it came out a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it literally starts with him saying, "Hi, I'm Matthew Perry, and I should be dead."
Yeah. It's
right, and
yeah.
it's haunting now because and he says something effective. If you want, you can think of this as a message from beyond, and it's him being Matthew Perry, right? But of course, now there is this, obviously this extra meaning in those words, and for me, I have so many feelings about this because I feel like you're a recent, more of a recent fan of Friends. Am I wrong there?
100%. Yeah, no, I have a very different relationship with him than I think most people do. Like for me, I knew he was funny on Friends, but I didn't watch a lot of it. But I knew him weirdly. I mean, from movies, right? Like the whole nine yards,
whole 9 yards, yeah.
Fools Rush In, and which I thought when I remember
Fools
watching
Rush
Fools
In,
Rush
which was in everybody's DVD collection in the late 90s, early 2000s,
because it came with the DVD player. Yes, that's why I had it. And but I remember watching that and just thinking it was this sort of like, whatever rom-com thing, and that's why they gave it to me for free, and thinking like, this is a cute little movie, and like he is really funny in it.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, Matthew Perry, he's a really funny comedian. Like I knew that, but I didn't have the whole Friends, imprint on me at that time. No.
See, Friends, I was talking about this in my class, after this happened. And first of all, like we're talking about like stuff that transcends. Well, Friends has transcended.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Friends are friends to today's college kids,
Yep.
It's remarkable. Yep. But when that show started, I was a sophomore in high school.
Yeah.
And when it ended, I had been married for about a year.
Wow.
So that's like, when you talk about like this really crucial chunk of my life that involved watching Friends every Thursday night, and I remember, before I moved to California, I would go to Sean's house on Thursdays and we would watch Friends. That was our routine,
Oh, yeah.
And so it's like, so many of my fond memories are tied up with that show. And truly, Chandler was always my favorite. That all the way back then, and he was everybody's favorite, right? Because he was the one we hoped we could be, because he was witty and he could pop with the one-liners, And there's just something about, like, even back then we knew about the stuff he was going through, and you can see it when you watch the show. You can see his weight just sort of whipsawing up and down.
Yep.
But like knowing all the internal struggle he was dealing with, and to still be like just he gave so much joy, not only during those 10 years, but in the almost 20 years that the show's been off the air. People are continually rediscovering it, right?
Yeah.
But another element of this that really hit me is like the Friends cast is never going to be whole again.
Right. Yeah.
And there's this stark finality to that. It's like, not exactly the same thing, but like when Robert Reed died, you're like, the Brady cast, like the Bradys are no longer whole. Right. And that's the stuff that happens to shows from longer ago.
Yes.
But like, Friends is so recent. It feels so immediate,
Well, and they, not only is it like you've said, I mean, it's still alive and well and being discovered by new generations and beloved, but I mean, they just did that reunion.
That's right. Yeah.
And seeing them all together and like, oh, I miss this. We've been through so much and this is so nice being together, and to think that that can't happen again.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw Matt LeBlanc's post on Twitter, or sorry, on Instagram, and that one really hit me hard because just we do sort of tend to think of them as sort of joined at the hip,
Mm-hmm.
and just again, it's the idea of knowing how close this cast was. The idea that like they're this is somebody who was a brother to them. They're never going to see him again. I don't know. It's uh this one hit me differently. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, for me, like this is all kind of recent for me, having just gone through Friends for the first time. And
So
I mean,
you've watched the whole series now.
yes. And
So you came into it through Federica.
yeah. Yeah. I mean,
So
she
interesting.
knew that Simpsons was my second language.
Yeah.
And so she watched the first 10 seasons of The Simpsons.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing? And now I will say something really obscure and she knows exactly what I'm talking about. And it's truly like, I'm almost tearing up saying it right now. It was so touching and special for me. But she grew up with Friends and she loves Friends. And so I was like, well, she was watching it one day, I think, just, binging it, doing something else in the living room. And I was like, I want to watch this with you. And so that's what we did. We just started at the beginning, went through the 10 seasons, and he was my favorite too. And I think what's fun about him is the wrong version of that character is he's a total a-hole.
That's right.
Right. But he's very insecure, he like fights back with humor in a way that we wish we could, like that's how he gets his confidence.
Yeah.
And it's just a really, really lovable character.
That's right.
And I mean, to be fair, just to my review of the show, I was like, oh, I didn't realize these guys were all geniuses. They're all comedic geniuses.
Yeah.
But he was the one that was...
Each of them found their lane, and
Yes.
they were master of that lane. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, like I was like, Ross, like he's like a sad sack, right? Like that was what I thought, like going into it. And then watching it, you're like, oh, David Schwimmer's a genius. Like he is really funny. But yeah, Matthew Perry got to do a lot of the showier sort of stuff, a lot of physical stuff, and it's just so funny.
There's an episode. It's the one where Monica wanted to send a stripper for Chandler.
Right.
And she ends up sending a prostitute by mistake. And it's this just great bit where Joey and Chandler realize that it's a prostitute and they have to figure out what to do. And they end up like they're going to do rock, paper, scissors to tell her to leave. And they have this great, like they're about to rock, paper, scissors. And Joey's kind of like smiling. And he's like, what are you smiling at? He's like, I miss this. I don't think we've ever actually done this before, Right. And that's obviously just hilarious in general, but that little clip I sent it to Sean and he's just like, whenever I see that, I think of you and me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's what this show is, right? It's these relationships that we can see ourselves in,
Absolutely. Well, and I do want to mention that
actually, Brian, real quick, sorry, I should mention this. Just yesterday in class, I was talking about having a shorthand with your friends. And I was like my best friend, I just communicate with him in Simpsons quotes.
Mm-hmm.
And he and we totally get it. And my wife doesn't even know what we're talking about, is what I said yesterday. So it's very funny to me.
That is so funny. But I mean, isn't it? It really is pretty special. That we
I
can
think
just
so.
We can just send like a freeze frame. You don't even need to send me the GIF. Like I know the tone of what is being conveyed. You know what I mean? Like I know the line.
Yep. But you were saying, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Well, no, I want to say after he passed, and I was that was when I was out in Oklahoma. I pulled up the audiobook and I listened to the whole thing, and I definitely recommend it. It's like you say, it has a whole new sort of a way to receive it now, but it's humorous. It's kind of sad, but it's also optimistic in a way that's really nice. Like, I mean, he was in a moment where it felt like he was, on an upward trajectory, but like very candid, very naked, like very like, yeah, I suck sometimes, and I treat people like crap, and I've, and like this thing, like he's very honest about like just the demons, that have been plaguing him, and where he thinks they've come from, and the way as he's grown up that he looks at them differently, and it's so him, you know what I mean? Like the way that he tells it, it's just, you can't help but be charmed by it. And now obviously a little sad by it, but I went through it pretty quickly, so I'd recommend it.
Yeah, it's a breezy listen, I think.
Yeah.
The show had been off the air again for almost 20 years at this point, and those actors, each of them continues to make $20 million a year off of reruns.
Right.
It's remarkable, right? But this too, I was, this was Matthew Perry talked about how that was David Schwimmer who went to the cast and was like, we should negotiate as a unit.
Right.
And what's so remarkable about this was like the second or third season when Ross and Rachel is driving the narrative, right? So in other words, in terms of pay parity, Schwimmer was on the higher end compared to the others.
Right.
So he took a pay cut in order to, get a better deal for everybody.
It's amazing. I mean, it's one of those things where you think, we know the outcome, so we know it works for everybody. And that's great. But you think about being in that moment. Yeah, it's a really amazing charitable thing that he did.
And that's why unions work, Brian. That's the lesson. One real quick, I wanted to mention the passing also of Richard Mall, who died just a couple days before Matthew Perry. He played Bull Shannon on Night Court, which is what he's most known for, and I think to some extent it was sort of an albatross around his neck because he never quite found it. I think he tried desperately to escape the shadow of that character, but I think it says something about how beloved that character was, and how lovable he was on that show. That people loved him as Bull, and I don't know if you were a big Night Court fan, but I mean, I used to watch it all the time.
Yeah, that was a big reruns. My parents loved it. I'd watch it with my parents late at night kind of thing.
Yeah, and what's great about it is that there has been sort of like a resurgence of love for the original Night Court. I see so much on social media, like, hey, I just started watching Night Court. This show is great, kind of thing.
Oh, funny.
Which is, I don't know what's driving that, but I was thinking about how, because just the other day I was watching a 30 Rock where it's like the one with the cast of Night Court. And it had Harry Anderson and Marky Post and Charles Robinson. I'm like, they are all gone now.
Yeah.
And now Richard Mall is gone, and I'm like, we're talking about sort of, Friends. Matthew Perry dies, and it's like, man, it's sort of been shattered, right? Night Court. It feels a disproportionate number of that cast has left us.
Yeah, it's too early. Like that show was
right?
Not that long ago. Yeah, it's weird.
Right. I mean, Harry Anderson was not that old when he passed away.
Right.
But I don't know if you've watched the new Night Court. I've been enjoying it. So
I've not seen it. I was going to bring that up. I was wondering if that's what was driving a little bit of people checking out the old one.
It's possible. I feel like the tune in for the new one would be more fans of the old one.
Yeah, I would think. Yeah.
And thankfully, the new one stars Melissa Roche as Harry's daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't heard any, SJW nonsense, which I guess is progress, I guess. Like, this woke bullshit or whatever.
Go internet. Good for you.
Way to not live down to my expectations, right. Internet, on this one. And you know what? I know even as I'm saying this, we're going to have people listening who are like, oh, you mean you missed this? And I guess I have.
Yeah. Or they weren't aware of the show and now they get to hate on it.
Now they get to, yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, if you like the old one, I would say watch the new one. I think it's good. John Larroquette is great. He plays Dan Fielding as a defense attorney. He was the prosecuting attorney in the old show. It's a different side. It's nice. It's nice, Brian. It's it's feel good. It's like a warm fuzzy blanket.
Yeah, I like that there's still these sort of 3-camera sitcom, things going on.
I agree. All right. Well, speaking of unions, the strike is over.
Yeah. The SAG after strike.
Yeah. We've had it's been the spring / summer / fall of strikes.
It has. I mean, this has been a really hard year, a very devastating year for a lot of people.
Yeah. So can you talk about that? Like the impact to folks who are just kind of doing their thing.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak for a friend I'm close with. She's an AD on live action, mostly television, and yeah, I mean, she's just been flat out of work. You know, like she's not in SAG, she's not in the WGA, but there's been absolutely, well, no, I'm not gonna say absolutely no work. There's been certain shows and films that have gotten, I forgot what the word is, permission, basically, because they're willing to meet the guild's requirements, you know, for
Right.
pay and whatnot. And so those things have been able to go, but by and large, most things have been shut down. And so there's just been, you know, no jobs for her. And so she's just been sitting, not receiving a paycheck, trying to get by. And that goes for all sorts of people, caterers, you know, makeup and hair people who build sets. I mean, a lot of people. I saw some stat too, where I don't remember the number, but it was astronomical, the amount of money that the California economy has lost this year. And then you got to think too, this is going to affect output, right? So certainly this coming month, we lost Dune. I mean, that's a big one, right? Which is revenue for people and theaters.
And that was pushed primarily because the cast would not have been able to promote it, and so the studio wanted to hedge its bets.
Correct. Yes.
And I would say probably it was a smart choice.
Probably. Yeah, it's funny because I was talking about this with my brother, and he was like, I don't really pay attention to who's on the Tonight Show. Like, I just go when I know something's coming. And I don't know. Right. I mean, obviously there's some sort of calculus that people think was worth it enough to do this. But then, yeah, you have theaters losing money. That's why, you know, there's a lot of articles about, you know, thank goodness for Taylor Swift, you know, coming in here and generating all this money for us all out of nowhere. And then next year, you know, there's not going to be as many things that they're going to be able to put out for a while until they can start making them again. So it's a big, you know, crater that we're going to be climbing out of for a little bit.
But the flip side is that it seems like SAG got a pretty satisfactory deal.
That seems to be the case, right? I mean, compensation, things like that were met. I think they wanted to know about like streaming performance so they could reward it, you know, sort of like how they used to do with the old rating system. You know, when a show does well, you get to increase pay.
And by the way, you know what we're going to find out is that there's a whole shit ton of streaming shows that ain't nobody watching.
I mean, I wonder, because I know some companies are measuring that already. Like you'll see like, oh, this Marvel show only had this or that, whatever. And I don't know how they're doing that, but it will be interesting if we start getting actual hard numbers from these streamers. Because I mean, they want that to be the future. Sorry to interrupt. Just because they want streaming to be the future. So no matter what, they're trying to be like, it is the future. Like we are succeeding 1 billion minutes, whatever that means. And if they have to start putting out hard data, it might reveal that like streaming has not taken off in the way that they want people to believe, you know?
Yeah. Well, guess what? It hasn't. And there's proof enough in that is how short these streaming seasons are. I mean, you know, we're kind of covering old ground, but what is the most popular stuff on streaming? It's all the old stuff that's been out there for decades.
Yeah. Like Suits. And those sorts of things.
Suits, Friends, Office, Simpsons, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, etc. Seinfeld, you know, and streaming originals. This is like the end result of this tech bro mentality of taking a model that was flawed, but it worked reasonably well, and just essentially scaffolding it to the point where you're driving people away more than you're drawing people to it.
Yeah.
You know, I said a few weeks ago, I'm like, why is Frasier a streaming series?
Yeah, I remember this. It would make way more sense to. Well, why not have it on NBC first?
Yeah, or CBS.
and then like a week later or something, it goes to your streaming service,
or whatever. Then the night of,
sure.
At midnight you can watch it on Paramount Plus.
Yeah,
It's on CBS, whatever, Monday night, and you know what I mean. Like it's cutting off your nose to smite your face. It's really odd, and we're seeing that in a variety of different ways. Like that the fundamentally you have these short run TV shows that just sort of exist in an island. There's not enough to syndicate, and like, what are you doing?
Right.
Like, um, I don't know what's a good example. Like some of these shows that have just been dropped down the memory hole, like Willow, right? Which admittedly I was like, whatever about that show. But like you spent money on it. I mean, it exists.
Yeah, but then they don't want to pay to even to keep it up on the service.
Yeah,
like,
so which means that the viewership was less than negligible. That's what that means.
Yeah, and it also, I think, for a time it felt like, speaking in my mind of Netflix, like say something like Stranger Things, it's like, okay, well, this exists on Netflix and it will always exist on Netflix. Like it's just this warehouse where everything, it's infinite, so it will always be there. Right. But it's now looking like, well, it's not looking like it is the case where this stuff, that's not true. Like they can remove anything they want at any time, and then it's not available literally anywhere.
That's right.
Right. Well, which actually, if we want to do a little hopscotch to that whole Wile E. Coyote movie.
I was going to bring this up. Yeah.
Yeah. Like this whole weird new, like accounting that studios are doing. Maybe they've done this in the past, but I don't feel like I remember anything on this scale where, studios are thinking, well, a tax write-off is worth more to us than putting out Batgirl. Right. So like we have this movie, it's shot, it's cut. Let's just throw it in the trash bin, literally for no one ever to see, so we can get a tax write-off. And so there was another one too, right? Oh, the Scooby-Doo movie.
Yeah, Scoob. Yep.
And then now, most recently, Warner Brothers was like, yeah, we made this Wile E. Coyote movie. John Cena's in it. Test scores seem to be pretty good, but we're just gonna throw it away.
Now this movie, I heard about it when it was first announced, and the premise, it's called Coyote versus Acme, and the idea is Wile E. Coyote has ordered all these products from the Acme company to try to catch the Roadrunner, and they always end up blown up in his face, literally and figuratively, and so he sues this company.
Yeah.
What? I don't know about you. I heard that premise. I was like, oh, that sounds really clever.
That's hilarious. It's a hilarious premise. Yeah.
And I heard, whenever, like a year and a half ago, and then I just forgot about it until, you hear the news. Oh, they're just dropping it down the memory hole. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that's baffling to me because it's to your point. Like, well, why'd you greenlight the thing? Number one.
I do think, to answer that question, I think it was intended for HBO Max when they thought that they were going to make a lot of movies per year for that service. And then they realized that wasn't profitable. So now they're like, no, this all has to be theatrical stuff. And I don't know.
Say,
yeah.
I mean, you didn't think about that? Like I could have told you that,
Right, yeah.
Like we had this conversation about Batgirl, which cost whatever it cost, let's say 100 million, right? Mm. Which may be less than that, but regardless, as much as I want to see that movie, I also say at the time it's I'm like, well, explain to me how you make that money back by putting it on HBO. Explain to me all the people who are going to subscribe to HBO Max, which is what it was called at the time, to watch this thing, whatever it is, Batgirl or Scoob or whatever. Right? I mean, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So yeah. And by the way, look at what happened with Blue Beetle.
Yeah.
Right, which you and I both liked. That was supposed to be for streaming. They ended up putting it in theaters, and it well, I mean, it arrived right in the middle of the strike, but I mean, it tanked.
Yeah.
So I mean, the economics of whatever they're trying to do don't make any sense.
Yeah.
And it's because you have a bunch of bean counters running the studio. I mean, Warner Brothers has this proud creative legacy, and it just feels like I don't know what's going on over there right now.
Yeah, you wish I know it's a business, but you wish it'd go back to the day of like hiring really talented tastemakers, anticipating what people will want and not doing math to try to figure out what they think people will want, and then you conjure up phenomenons and it makes money that way. I mean, you wish they would do that again, but yeah, now they're thinking, like you say, it's now run by accountants, and it's just you're losing that magic, and it's I think
and certainly if Yeah, and if you're gonna flip the kill switch, do it before you've shot the damn thing.
I
You know?
know, I know. It's wild. Wow,
I
it's
mean,
like
that's
reckless, you know?
it is. It just fine. Just kill it in the cradle, and then nobody's invested their heart and soul into it. You know?
I know. I was telling you off mic about this story. I'm on this like Facebook page with like movie crew members, and one guy was saying like I was the locations person on this, involved with locations, I should say, and
Wow.
he's like they wanted like a specific thing tomorrow that we didn't have, and I moved heaven and earth, and I got it. I busted my butt on this thing. It like strained my engagement to my fiance, the hours I was working, and it was literally all for nothing. you know? Yeah.
And I'm sure people hearing that will be like, "Well, you got paid, didn't you?"
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of it. But let's be honest, that's just part of why people go into this industry.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, it's yeah. but to be fair, we do need to mention there was a follow-up to the story, which was it looks like now Warner Brothers is willing to shop this movie if some other service wants to pick it up.
Yeah, well, they got shamed into it.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
But yeah, I guess they got there eventually, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think tangentially connected to that is, or maybe not tangentially connected, is the role of home video in the industry now. Which is so fascinating to me because well, physical media has long been considered sort of a dying breed.
Sure.
Best Buy said recently, as of the next year, we're not going to carry discs anymore. Netflix, they've stopped having their mail-in program. So there was this sense that physical media is going away. It's dying out. And I would say the last few months have been pretty interesting because what we're seeing a lot of sales data is like physical media sales are actually doing relatively fine. They're just not at the sort of stratospheric levels that they used to be, like the early to mid 2000s.
Yeah, I just saw. It was that article you sent me, and it's not, in the stratosphere anymore, but it's not nothing.
Well, what you realize, Brian, is that was the aberration.
Yeah, sure.
Right? Because when we were kids, I mean, certainly for me, I mean, during the VHS era, it's not like we bought every movie that came out.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You would rent stuff. You had like a few essentials that you had in your like own collection.
Yeah.
But a lot of it was stuff you taped off TV and stuff you rented, right? Am I wrong?
No, totally.
Right? When DVDs were priced to own initially, and that sort of just completely shifted the paradigm. And so you had a bunch of normies who were like everybody. I mean, it sounds, diminutive, but no,
you know what? 100%. You were reminding me of something I hadn't thought about in a while, which was when I was a kid, when I was like 13 years old, I was that weird kid that was using my allowance to buy The Fugitive on VHS.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like that was what I wanted to spend my money on. And my other friends were not doing that. But then when I went to college, I remember thinking like, oh, these other kids who are not as into movies as I am, they have like 20 DVDs. Like it just became normal to just like, if you liked a movie, to just buy it.
That's right.
And that was like our huge shift.
Yeah. So what we saw, thanks to the onset of streaming and everything else, is things are sort of reverting to mean.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And
right.
So there is still a market for films on DVD, and or on physical media, I should say. And what is sort of gratifying is by virtue of sort of the reversion to mean, it is, and you've talked about this, it's becoming like vinyl where it's targeted more towards the collector. And so by extension, there is a move towards having expansive special features and commentary tracks and things like the stuff that I always worry about, like, oh, that's just going to go away.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been kind of interesting seeing this. I think right now the ground is sort of settling, and we're going to see where things are with physical media. But I think Best Buy not selling it anymore is not the mortal wound that a lot of people are assuming it is.
Yeah, and I think, gone are the days where like, Ashley Judd's Double Jeopardy will be in like a lot of people's collections. You know what I mean? Like those sort of, oh yeah, well I saw that, so I'm just going to buy it and I might watch it once, or, like that's all gone. But, you have Oppenheimer coming up, and I just have a feeling it's going to be probably packed with interesting things. It was kind of a phenomenon.
Right.
That'll probably do okay. And then, it was just announced that The Abyss is coming to 4K and Blu-ray, and I bet that will be a thing that a lot of people scoop up. So it'll probably be more like that kind of a thing, versus just everything being bought by everybody. It's like more special event sort of stuff.
And you have these boutique labels like Shout Factory or Arrow. I order a lot of DVDs from them, and just recently I got like the 4K edition of Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. And yeah, right. See, there's a very specific demographic that would hear that and say, "Oh, right." You and I are in that mix, but I mean, it's stocked to the gills with all kinds of behind the scenes stuff and everything. And I'm like, again, this is aimed at that niche, but that niche is eaten well, is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's kind of a continuing story. Let's see what happens with that. But let's take another short break. We come back. We got a big new release to discuss.
David's Bridal, where brides and bridesmaids get fabulously dressed. We let our friends pick out what we wear, show off our dance moves, obsess over every little detail, hold your hand through it all, smile bravely when it's time to let go. Make your dreams come true. The things we do for love, only at David's Bridal. David's Bridal, where brides and bridesmaids get fabulously dressed. We let our friends pick out what we wear, show off our dance moves, obsess over every little detail, hold your hand through it all, smile bravely when it's time to let go. Make your dreams come true. The things we do for love, only at David's Bridal.
And we are back. And Brian, you know who else is back?
Who's that, Zachy?
Why, it's Brie Larson as Captain Carol Danvers, aka Captain Marvel.
Hey.
She's joined by some other Marvel heroes, and it's the latest round in the Marvel Cinematic Universe's never-ending volley, which I think a lot of people are feeling exhausted of, but we'll talk about that in a second. The Marvels is in theaters, and it opened, Brian, to the lowest opening weekend ever for a Marvel Studios release.
Yeah, I mean, did it at least... I was going to play like dumb and set you up, and it just feels so silly. I was going to say, did it even come close to Five Nights at Freddy's?
It did not. I think it made about half of
something like that.
Five Nights, right? And so this is interesting because this is a film that, in my opinion, the reasons that it didn't open well are various and sundry.
Yep.
I can very easily see, quote, diversity being the thing that gets hung on it by the studio. And more than anything, it just kind of irks me that kind of the anti-woke crowd gets to claim a figurative scalp.
I know that's the thing, right? Because I feel like there's a lot we can talk about with this movie, and I almost want to just be like, shut up, just shut up. Like, just let the grown-ups talk for a minute, and we'll talk about, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, like, and we'll get into it, but yeah, to be fair, I don't know that this character took off in a way that the studio was probably hoping for, and I think that is a part of it. What I mean is, there are factors to examine and discuss when it comes to this movie's performance. I just prefer to ignore the more empty, quick to be hateful takes and have a more measured, thoughtful conversation about it.
Yes. And it happened to arrive at probably the worst time in terms of this encroaching narrative that the MCU is sort of an empire in decline,
Right.
I think they really needed to get a triple, and they just got on base is kind of my feeling.
Yeah.
I think big picture, I think this movie, when we look at the the long list of MCU product in the last 15 years, this to me is like somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I'd say same.
I say it's a perfectly fine mid-tier MCU release that I think, given the narrative right now, it didn't do what it needed to do. And it's funny because I tweeted basically what I just said to you, and I was taking fire from all sides.
Really?
I was taking fire from the folks who were like, no, it's a piece of shit and you're a woke SJW, whatever. And then I took fire from the folks who were like, you sexist, misogynist, you're
right.
And I'm like, I said I liked it. I said mid-tier MCU is like a good thing, and that's sort of, it's funny because we talked about Thor the Dark World last week, and I'm like, well, I think it's better than Thor the Dark World.
I agree. Although I will say this, Thor really opened my eyes to something I hadn't thought about before, which Thor 2. I said I like the beats, but I almost feel like instead of the movie trusting to have moments to allow me to sit in something with the character or allow the characters to sit in something, it feels like the cinematic version of someone who saw a movie telling it back to me. Like, it's okay. They think it's enough.
This is Thor the Dark World you're talking about.
This was Thor the Dark World.
But I feel like it could just as easily apply to the Marvels.
And I felt the same thing with this one. And that is to say, I liked the beats in this movie. I liked the characters. I liked the bad guy and her motivation. But it didn't allow a lot of moments to sit in them when I feel like it really would have gone a long way just in terms of a movie, not just this movie, just a movie. Like I thought I had this past week, we have this tradition where we put up our Christmas tree and watch Die Hard. And I was watching Die Hard, and you're like, you have the whole Al Powell thing where he's, accidentally shot someone and he's been taken off the street and he's kind of messed up from it. And, you have McClane saying, I say I love you, but I've never said I'm sorry. And during that, I never said I'm sorry speech. I was like, this movie's under 2 hours. Like, this is a bombastic, huge, classic action movie that still has enough time to have those moments. So he's not just some guy with a gun bringing down the bad guy. Like it trusts you to care about this and to want him to get back to his wife. And I was like, there were so many moments in this movie that they kind of like set up, but I was like, why didn't they let us sit in that for a second? Or why didn't they like really hit that a little bit harder at the beginning so we'd feel that payoff at the end a little bit more? And that was my biggest sort of regret with the film was I like all these characters. I like this adventure. I wish it had just felt a little more textured and richer and character deep than it did.
I think just to pick up what you're saying, I think for me watching this, I was like, I wish I cared more for Carol's journey.
100%. And it's all kind of there, right? But they just, it's almost like they don't think people will sit through that. But I would beg to differ. We showed up. We're here because we care. So like, why not trust the audience and give them a little bit more of that stuff? Like, I mean, just to go right into it, I mean, there's the whole sort of hero worship that happens with Kamala, right? And Carol doesn't quite know how to deal with that, but it's not really dealt with. But then at the end, Kamala sort of apologizes for being like, I'm sorry I treated you this way. I should have just tried to be your friend, right? And I was like, man, but I don't really feel like they hit on that. Like, I think it would have been interesting if they had a scene, at least one scene, where Carol did sort of push her away to Kamala's sadness. And it makes her, makes Superman feel weird, and it makes Superman's fan feel weird, and then they forge that relationship, like an arc, if you will.
Well, and here's my thought, right? Because Kamala has like posters of Captain Marvel on her wall, and she wants to be besties, whatever. So she's the greatest hero of all. And then the Kree think of Captain Marvel as the greatest villain of all, right?
Yes.
And Carol's like, well, I'm neither of those things.
Yeah.
who am I, right? And it's that the whole struggle about her trying to regain her identity. There's something really interesting then you wrap together with, you know, what you think of yourself versus what other people think of you,
Totally.
right?
Totally.
Now, that being said, first of all, Tiana Paris, I loved her. I loved her on WandaVision. I enjoyed her in this, but Iman Vellani as Ms. Marvel, as Kamala. I mean, this kid's just a rock star.
Total rock stars. Yep.
Everything with her, and you never watched Ms. Marvel, so I was actually going to ask you, like, were you out to sea with this character, or were you able to catch up?
No, it was pretty easy, I think.
That's what I think, right?
Yeah, but it did make me want to watch it. That's one of those ones I've always been meaning to get around to, but it's never been. It's always been like in fourth position, you know.
For me, that character means so much. As a Muslim, as a Marvel fan, to see a family like mine exist within the Marvel universe, you know?
Yeah.
And obviously my daughter, like, Ms. Marvel's her favorite. I even asked her, I was like, oh, who do you like better, Captain Marvel or Ms. Marvel? Oh, Ms. Marvel, you know?
Yeah.
But it's like she gets to see somebody who looks just like her.
Yep.
Be a superhero, you know? And like all of the stuff, like, to me, it's like Blue Beetle, honestly. All the family stuff just hit exactly the right way.
Yeah.
I had the same feeling here, where that to me was the heart and soul, and I wanted more of that, you know? Because I thought the parents are great. I think the brother is great. Like, it's just that it just feels very lived in. It feels very genuine.
Totally.
But it also felt like there's like pieces of the story that we didn't get, which I don't like. Like, why do the cons go up to the space station?
I thought about that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And even one line where mom is like, no, I want to see where she is, or one line from Fury where he's like, well, you know, the Kree were here and we need to keep your family safe in case they track the radiation to this house or something. I mean, just something, you know?
Totally. Yeah.
That explains it, you know?
Yep.
But like this is me, right? Like, at near the end of the film, when Kamala is like about to, you know, do her hero thing against the villain. We'll talk about her in just a second. But she says Bismillah, right?
Yes, and I noticed that.
And you know, Bismillah means in the name of God, right?
Yeah.
And it's something, you know, I say it all the time. You know, when I get in my car, I say Bismillah. It's just part of our language, you know?
Yep.
And I was telling Amina, I was like, could you have imagined that, like, when we were kids, just something as simple as that?
Right.
You know, and there's a moment where the family is like in danger, and the brother's like, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, la ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, and that means there's no God but God. Muhammad is a messenger of God. And it's just a prayer that we say it. And Fury's like, are you praying? Well, don't stop.
Dude, I wrote that down. That line made me laugh so hard because it was so like, are you praying? And then he stops. He's like, well, don't stop. That was so good.
So all of that cultural stuff hit, obviously, very specifically and in a very special way for me. But all of that notwithstanding, I'm like, this movie's 100 minutes. We talked about it before, and it's like, I think it's good that it's short, but I think it could have been a little less short and it would have been improved.
I agree. And I again, I think all the blocks are there. I really do like that whole thing. Like you said, you know, to some people, Carol's Superman. To others, she's the worst villain ever. I think that's really interesting. I just wish it all the relationship stuff. I just feel like you could have filled in a little bit more, and we would have felt a lot more.
Yeah.
Especially with Carol. I mean, she's still a little impenetrable, you know, like she's kind of.
And that's a big problem, man. I don't know. Yeah. I felt that after the first Captain Marvel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I remember I wrote that movie. I was like, who is Carol Danvers? Right.
Yes.
Like, and I think the whole plot device in that first film of like, she doesn't know her identity and stuff. I thought that was a mistake then. I think it's even more of a mistake now, because I'm just like, I mean, she's a cipher, you know?
Yeah.
And I think Brie Larson is a good enough actor that, like, I just keep wishing they were giving her a little bit more to play, you know?
Yeah, that's why I had this conversation with a couple people this week, because I was like, I it's like I hate I even have to like qualify this, but I like Brie Larson. You know what I mean? I think she's a great actress. I think Room is great. Short Term 12 is great. She's like so unique in Scott Pilgrim playing. I've never seen her do that anywhere else, you know, like what she does in that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something about this character but the opportunity was there with these two people for her to bounce off of when they share this ability or not this ability, but like the light power or whatever it's called, right? Like they have a similar thing that bonds them, but they're so different and they have the different reasons they're at odds. And I wish that had come into play more and created an arc for all of them where they become this united thing at the end. And then like you were saying with Carol, help her to come into who she is, you know, for herself like that. Oh man, that would have been a great movie. You know?
Yeah, and it kind of gets to, you know, we've talked before when this was with Thor, where like the villain should always be a vehicle to gain a greater insight into the hero. Well, I actually think that the opportunity was there here with this because I saw a thing on Twitter. Somebody had a picture of Zawe Ashton as Dar-Benn. It's the worst villain in the history of the MCU. And I'm like, what kind of pot are you smoking? Like she's not Thanos, but she's not freaking Malekith or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
Like, again, the whole thing is mid-tier, which is why it drives me nuts how everybody, it's got to be either the best thing ever or the worst thing ever.
Yes, which is something I hate.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, and I do, well, I guess kind of getting into spoilery stuff, but
well, let's talk spoilers. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Spoiler.
Brian, I should say,
yeah.
After we did not do spoilers for Killers of the Flower Moon,
yeah,
I was talking to Pervez and he was like, "Yeah, you should have done spoilers." So now I'm like,
shoot, really?
I'm like extra paranoid about it now. So
apologies. You know, it's funny. I think with that one, because it's real life, I felt like less like qualifying things as spoilers, but of course it's a spoiler. It's a story. Like people don't know it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But you were saying, go on.
Well, all I was going to say was, you know, we get that scene where we see, what's her name? I don't actually know.
Dar-Benn.
Dar-Benn, where we see Captain Marvel doing her thing from another point of view, from her point of view, where she is the annihilator, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was good, but like, I don't know, I almost wish it had dug in a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, a little more reactions on the face, or like we get another scene where we see, I mean, we do get these scenes, but maybe I just didn't feel enough. But like her with her people, or someone who's close to her, or looking at like I wouldn't do this, but like a picture frame of someone she lost on that day, or, you know, just so we just get that much more to understand why this person's doing this and is hurt and feels the way she does. Because otherwise it feels, I get it, but it's a little like surfacey and like, got it, cool, she's bad and we'll stop her. And
you know, is surfacey notwithstanding, which I agree, I as compared with the, you know, Malekith, where you and I were both like, yeah, but why, right? For all of it. With this, it's like, okay, this is what she's trying to do, and this is why she's trying to do it.
Yep.
And why is she hitting up these specific planets? Oh, it's because they have a specific connection to Carol. Like I'm tracking with all of that.
Yeah.
Right. And I was thinking of our commentary as I was watching, because I was like, see, I mean, I get her motivation.
Yeah.
And I get why she's doing, I mean, her plan, I mean, it's like, the only thing missing was Mega Maid, you know, she was just trying to,
that
doing like
was
a space.
Literally, she's enacting the plot of Spaceballs. Yes. Feeling the air from a planet. Yeah.
But I was tracking with that because the tie-in with like this planet and that planet and all of them, she has some connection to. I get that. But here's the thing. The music planet, which I guess that's like kind of controversial. Like, oh, what kind of bullshit is this? I was like, whatever. I don't know. It's a planet where they sing. Who cares?
Yeah, it's like, it feels Guardians-esque, if I'm being honest.
Guardians-esque, exactly. However, the relationship between Carol and the prince, I didn't get.
Zachy, yes. Right? That's a window. That's a window into her. And I feel like it was a missed opportunity.
Yeah, well, and it's weird because the thought I had was, are they trying to like de-queer Carol? That was my thought, because there's like
Oh, that didn't
that.
cross my mind.
Yeah, well, and I only bring that up because that's a reading of Carol and Maria's relationship,
Oh, okay.
right? Which I mean, I think it's like a Rorschach test, but I was like,
Sure,
are they
sure.
trying to say no, she's straight because this guy?
Oh, that's so interesting. For me, it was just like, you know, when you're like, where the heck have you been? Well, like
Yeah.
the whole, through Endgame and all this stuff, when everything is like at its most dire, or Thanos, or you want to say, like, oh, I literally have trillions of adventures going on around the galaxy where I've been helping people. I'm married to this prince to help him. I'm doing that. You know what I mean? Like trying to like visualize, portray, better word,
Yeah.
why she's so busy all the time. Like
Right.
just this wacky thing that you did. This is even like 1,000th of the thing that she's been up to. That was sort of how I took that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem is you got to get into that a little bit, you know.
Yeah, I did wonder. I'm like, well, does she actually? Is he a friend?
Exactly. That's
She seems to not really have much of a relationship with him either. Like she just kind of doesn't let anyone in. Is sort of the sense you get.
I mean, and then my mind is like maybe he's gay, but like culturally he has to marry a woman, and so it's kind of this, because you can read that into it too, you know.
Well, now, yeah, I see that now, yeah.
And I'm like, look, whatever, just go with it, whatever you're gonna do, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's all this stuff. It feels like they probably got a lot of these beats, but they were just like, let's trim this to the bone and just get it out the door.
I mean, going back to what I was saying with Thor 2, I just felt like Marvel's MO is sort of like, we don't want to lose the audience, just keep moving forward.
Right.
Not in all of them, but in certain ones. And I wish they wouldn't do that.
So this year, I mean, we have to take stock of the fact that this year has not been a great one for the Marvel machine.
Yeah.
Because they completely shit the bed with Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania.
Yeah.
Guardians 3, I guess, kind of just snuck out, you know,
and it was good
under the radar.
It wasn't super memorable for me, but although I did enjoy myself while I was watching it.
But I mean, of the 3 movies this year, I think it's head and shoulders above.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right. I mean, I would go Guardians, and then a few levels below we get the Marvels, and then several levels below we get Ant-Man. Right. That's kind of where we're at.
Sure. Yeah.
But I think just as importantly, I mean, like 2 months ago was Secret Invasion, which in my opinion is the worst MCU thing, period.
I find that fascinating. I haven't watched it, but I'm hearing that unanimously.
I mean, it not only is it terrible, it makes even less sense when you take the Marvels into account. And I'm like, was the Marvels supposed to come before this and they just didn't like plan for it? Like, you know what I mean? Because Nick Fury is the main character in that.
Right.
And it's like 2 different guys.
But see, I don't know how they run things over there, but I thought I had read somewhere that, it's kind of confusing with the Wanda character, everything she's been through in WandaVision, and then how she is in Doctor Strange. And I thought I had read somewhere that Sam Raimi's like, oh yeah, I didn't even watch WandaVision, And so I don't know, right? If there's some filmmakers aren't checking in with everything. So
I mean, here's the thing. I think that obviously Marvel's interconnectivity, which is one of its greatest assets, has now become one of its greatest liabilities, right? Because if you don't expect the interconnectivity, then it's like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and you just watch it and you enjoy it for what it is. Right. And I've said before on the show, I think Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is a quality show, and if somebody's looking for something that's MCU adjacent, you got a good show waiting for you, right? But
yeah,
I think it worked to that show's benefit that the movies were like, hey, go away, kid, you bother me,
All right.
And even the Netflix Marvel shows, right? But now, well, there's this expectation, like all this stuff needs to pay off somehow. And with WandaVision, you can at least connect the dots from point A to point B, being Doctor Strange. With Secret Invasion, I'm just like, if they had memory hold that show, it would have no impact whatsoever on the Marvels.
Mm-hmm.
And if anything, it may have contributed to people not wanting to go see the Marvels. Right now, anecdotally, I've asked every one of my classes, hey, how many of you went to see the Marvels? And I would say collectively, out of like 10 classes, about 4 kids raised their hands.
Wow.
So there's a data point. Other data point, my nieces, so my brother's daughters, who love Kamala. I mean, they literally grew up reading her. They're like, oh, we'll watch it on Disney Plus.
I'm hearing that a lot, by the way.
Yeah.
I've mentioned this before in the show, but from like other fellow filmmaker friends who I thought, we're all freaks for this stuff and we go opening weekend and whatever. That is just not the case these days.
So Disney may have sort of shot themselves in the foot in pursuing streaming glory. Because they've despecialed not just Marvel but Star Wars also. I would say I'd be very curious how a new Star Wars movie performs.
Me too. Yeah.
Now that being said, worth mentioning that the finale of Loki dropped the same day that the Marvels premiered.
Okay.
And I don't think you've watched it, right?
No, but I do plan. That's up, 1 or 2 in position now.
Dude, can I tell you something?
Yeah.
Probably Loki season 1, season 2 collectively, one of the best Marvel things ever, in my opinion.
Oh, okay.
This is me. I'm not trying to hype you up too much, but I'm like, to me, that ending was like, chef's kiss.
That makes me excited. And it also makes me think, I'm like, man, wouldn't it be nice? Maybe they need to give some of these things some endings,
I think so. Right.
Sorry, I just wanted to qualify that with saying not that you have to then not bring that character ever back again, but like if you give them some sort of villain or whatever, like it's okay to not be like, oh, we'll fight again another day. Like, give us a little more satisfying ending sometimes. I think people like that.
Yeah, I mean that's sort of the dilemma, right? I mean that's kind of I have a feeling that there's going to be a great sorting when it comes to Marvel over the next year. I mean next year there's only Deadpool 3. That's the only MCU movie.
That's wild.
Right. And maybe that's for the best. I would say, I think scarcity is probably a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like even, they have the Hawkeye spinoff Echo that's dropping I think in January, but they're like, oh, this is Marvel Spotlight. So you don't need to worry about all that other stuff, right? And so in others there's a realization that the movies and TVs have become exactly where the comics are, where it's just too much. You can't keep up with everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in other words, either you have to be content with diminished returns because of the amount of stuff you're putting out, or you have to dial all the stuff way back and focus on just a few handfuls of things.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would say 2 movies a year, 2 shows a year. That's what I would say.
It feels nice and clean.
Right? Because I don't know. I mean, I think this is my point. Like the Marvels, the fact that it opened where it did says that the audience wasn't even interested in going to the theater. It has nothing to do with the quality of the movie. Right. The quality of the movie we'll see next week.
Yeah.
They didn't even show up. Exactly. And I'm curious actually, because by the way, Elemental had the lowest Pixar opening ever.
Mm-hmm.
And it went on to become a substantial hit because it just hung in there.
Yeah, it had legs.
So, hey, maybe that happens with the Marvels. Who knows? I don't know what the word of mouth is going to be on it. But regardless, opening weekend being what it is, it's because people are just like, I'll get to it when I get to it. And I'm like, man, when you lose your event status, that's a problem,
Yeah.
And again, I with Star Wars, I had this exact conversation with you where I'm like, look, I don't mind having all these shows out there, but I kind of miss when Star Wars was just this thing you go to the theater to see,
Or at least when there weren't as many shows, like the event status. That's really well put. Yeah, it just feels like when it gets to, I'll get to it.
Yeah, and it's it's kind of it's like with comic books, at least for me, when I was collecting, there would be series that I was buying just to buy, and before long I had like 6-7 issues piled up that I hadn't read. But I was just like, well, I've got a complete set, so I don't want to,
right.
And in other words, people are sometimes just looking for the off ramp. And I think inadvertently Marvel has provided an off ramp, because at some point people miss so much that they're just like, you know what, I'm not really missing anything,
I'll admit The whole AI thing that Carol destroyed, I did not remember that I knew that.
Sure.
I was like, wow, that seems really important. Why are they just showing this in some sort of choppy flashback? But I was like, that was okay. That happened. Like, I just forgot,
Yeah, I mean, the first Captain Marvel, I don't remember very well.
Yeah.
That's the other thing, by the way, because that movie, the first one, made just buku bucks, right? I mean, it broke $1 billion.
It made over $1 billion.
But why is that? It was an Infinity War Endgame sandwich.
Yes. And there's the promise of a new character. I think that's part of it too. And we were in the hype. We were in the hype phase, and it's a new character, and it was leading. I think I mentioned before, my parents are like, "Well, got to see this to prepare for the big thing."
Exactly, right. So it's unrealistic to expect every movie to hit those levels, but then you shouldn't be spending money like you expect every movie to hit those levels.
Yes,
because this thing cost $200 million, and I'm like, well, that's obviously that was too much.
Yeah.
You bring these budgets down. I don't know. We're doing like therapy for Kevin Feige right now. It's like,
right. Yeah, if not more, by the way. I think it might have been over 200 million.
I believe that too. I mean, certainly when you factor in P&A and all that stuff, right?
Yeah. Wait, I have a couple more things I want to mention, if you don't mind. One
please.
Criticism that I want to clear up with you, and then two positives. I thought Carol kickstarting the sun was interesting because they're like, all right, the sun is dying. They're like, well, you can start it. And I was expecting her to be like, I could, but I might die. Or something.
Yeah, instead it's like, oh, here I go. Did it.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, I could do that.
What's next?
Well, it's like, no, you should do that because it's clearly of no risk to you. Like their sun is dying. Like there's no stakes. Like I thought that was really weird. And then later, I don't remember which character it is, but it's like, where's Carol? And one of the characters is like, she's got a promise to keep, a favor she's going to do. And again, there'd be some sort of weight if it was like she could die doing this to help this world. But it's like she literally just goes and punches the sun and it's okay. And then she ends up with the characters again. And I was like, that was weird.
Yeah.
It was enough that I wrote it down. I really loved the scene of the girls coordinating. They're, when they
right, yeah,
and they're doing the jump rope, and
yeah.
Sorry, I'm going to say this because someone probably thought it. I didn't mean to call them girls, the women. When they're learning like to catch the ball, when they're learning to activate their power so they can skip places of jump rope. I thought that was a really fun idea. I wish they had almost like gone even harder with that at the end, like the coordination of it all. But like that was a really cute bonding scene, I thought, with these characters that I enjoyed watching.
I agree. Yeah.
And then I also wanted to talk about Kamala's recruitment Nick Fury scene.
Oh yeah, with Haley Steinfeld.
Yeah, that was really funny.
It was cute. I liked it.
Yeah,
and it obviously they're setting up like a Young Avengers thing, right?
Yes, which has me a little worried about.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree with that. I'm like, I don't know who's going to be tuning in for that. That being said, Brian, I mean, post Endgame, we've got an armload of post credit scenes.
Yeah,
that I can't imagine they have the ability to follow through on all of them.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, let's just go down the list here. Right. We got Shang-Chi. It's the rings are from like somewhere deep in space. Okay, that's one. Eternals. Remember, we got Harry Styles and Pat Oswalt. Remember that thing?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see what happens with that. And then Eternals also. Remember, what's his name? Kit Harington is about to pick up the sword, and then we hear Blade.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Okay, yeah. Let's see what happens with that.
And we've been hearing that's. I mean, we got a little glimpse behind the curtain that has not been going swimmingly.
Yeah. So that's one. Honestly, you spend $50 million on that movie and you make it down and dirty.
Mm.
R-rated. That's what you do for that, and it'll do well. Yep. Remember Doctor Strange where Charlize Theron showed up in her Spirit Halloween costume?
Holy cow, I forgot about that. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Right. So I mean, there's a lot of these now.
Yeah. Huh.
And then in this one, we get Kelsey Grammer as Beast from the X-Men movies.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see what happens. Well, that I'm assuming they're doing something with.
Yeah. Oh well, I guess it's worth mentioning the Pedro Pascal is some involvement with an upcoming Fantastic Four movie, right? That was announced.
He may potentially be Reed Richards, which has me interested. Actually, I think that's interesting casting.
Yeah, that's as someone who has not read all of these comic books, and I really just know Marvel through the films, I find it fascinating that people really love Fantastic Four. Like that seems to be a really beloved thing that everyone is anticipating the perfect execution of that. And so that has me excited for it. I'm like, oh, well, if the potential of whatever that is and what it means to people is so great, I really want to see an awesome Fantastic Four movie.
I hope so too. Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, Marvel's not going away anytime soon, but yeah, I mean, I think they have the advantage of there is a lot of like goodwill still.
Yeah.
Like people are rooting for them to succeed. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh, F this, I'm done. It's like, well, come on, guys, get it together kind of thing.
Maybe that's healthy, honestly, instead of just letting people just celebrating everything and letting them get away with it and then having things diminish,
This is the middle of Rocky 3 phase of the MCU. That's where we're at. They fought Hulk Hogan and they thought, man, we can get away with anything. And then Mr. T showed up and just beat some ass. And
yeah, I mean, if I had any advice, I think the best film they put out in years was Spider-Man, No Way Home. And that movie had so much heart, so much depth, tragedy, triumph. Like I would just say, man, we're looking for more than a roller coaster ride. We show up to these things because we want to be there. Like, feel free to do that with all this stuff. That's the thing I walked away with this. Like, I wanted to feel things like that with this. I still came away. I know, like, I don't want to like mislead anybody and say that it's great because I don't think it is. Mm-hmm. But like, I had a good time with it. Like, I think I was in the mood. I was just kind of in the mood to kick back with something kind of fun. But I think it could have been so much more.
It's like I said, I think it's perfectly fine. It's not a movie I'm probably going to revisit, but I don't regret having watched it. And in terms of the spectrum of Marvel offerings, it's like somewhere near, Ant-Man the Wasp, Ant-Man 2.
Like, sure. Exactly. And when it does show up, I hate promoting it this way, but when it shows up on Disney Plus, kick it on. You're not going to, I don't think you're going to have a bad time, but it's somewhere in the middle.
I do think as it pertains to the streaming stuff, and when I look at like the most successful Marvel streaming shows creatively, I would say WandaVision and Loki.
Yeah.
And I think both of those, because they're offering something that's adjacent to the movies but it enriches that experience, right? So it's not, it's not just trying to do what the movies do. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like what WandaVision did could not have been a movie. It would have been too esoteric and it just wouldn't have played that way. And so it worked perfectly in that format. And that's the opportunity. And Loki too, right? Like I was thinking about with Loki, right? Like really Loki's arc ends in Avengers Infinity War.
Mm-hmm.
And, this series has been following a variant of Loki. And so that's an interesting tangent, but it's not essential in the traditional sense, right?
Sure.
And yet, in my opinion, I found it very emotionally enriching. I found it very fulfilling. But it's doing something you couldn't do as a movie.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Whereas, like Moon Knight, well, it's just another superhero origin. You could have figured out how to do that as a movie. Falcon and the Winter Soldier I thought was fine actually, but I don't think it was essential.
Right.
Like they got to figure that out is my point. So you need to dial this stuff way back and figure out what the goal has to be. We need to make successful movies. So if the streaming shows are not moving you towards that end, you got to go back to formula and figure this out.
Yeah. It makes me also want to hear an interview, or if there's like a tell-all book someday with a Secret Invasion. I'd be like, what was the goal?
Yep.
With that, like, what did you think the outcome of that would be? Or is it you just wanted to do a show with Samuel L. Jackson?
Yeah. No. Here's what I think, Brian. I think it was, we have a gap in a release schedule in this
Hmm.
quarter.
Yeah.
Come up with something. Oh, Secret Invasion. We'll figure it out.
Right.
And they were figuring it out on the fly. Apparently, they were just reshoots up the yin yang. They had no idea what they were doing.
Right.
That's the other thing. Actually, this is Marvel. They got to get this shit together. Look, why did Guardians of the Galaxy 3 work as well as it did? Because James Gunn had a locked script.
Right.
And too much of this is, oh, we'll figure it out in the reshoots. We'll figure it out in post.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's definitely a lot of that at play with the Marvels. So this is an opportunity to sort of gut check, reassess, and figure out how you want to accomplish what you want to accomplish. So, as far as I'm concerned, the lowest, the nadir of Marvel content this year is not the Marvels. It is Secret Invasion.
Mm-hmm.
You know. By the way, and I've mentioned this to you off mic, but this book by Joanna Robinson and company, MCU: The Reign of Marvel Studios, highly recommend it.
Yeah, I definitely want to. I like Joanna Robinson as a personality and as a writer, but yeah, I'm very interested in checking that out.
Yeah, like let me put it this way: I bought the book, I bought the actual book, and I'm reading it, and then I was like, I had to put it down, and I'm like, ugh. I want to keep reading, so I just downloaded the audiobook also, so I could
nice.
So I have both because that's how engrossing it was, you know.
Yeah. See,
and
you were saying that it's not just some sort of glossy retelling of what happened. Like this is into the nuts and bolts of.
Yeah, the ups and downs. I mean, it's really quite expansive, and I know for a fact you'll be thoroughly pulled in by it. I know that.
I love that stuff. Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah. But I think that's a good place to leave this conversation. What do you say? Yeah,
I was looking forward to this so much because, actually in the middle of the movie, or maybe just as it ended, I thought, I want to do a commentary of this, like right away. Like I want to workshop this with Zachy. So I was really excited to get on mic and talk through it here. So, yeah.
I mean, literally here, I'll read you the tweet, which I consider this is like the platonic ideal of a tweet that managed to piss off everybody.
Okay.
I mean, literally, you tell me what I said that was wrong here. I said The Marvels is a perfectly fine mid-tier Marvel entry. Unfortunately, that's not what was needed given the prevailing narrative at the moment about the MCU. There's a whole convergence of factors at play for why it didn't land, but watch, quote, diversity be the only thing that's blamed.
Right.
Holy shit.
I just heard a lot of thumbs popping in anticipation to reply to you.
I mean, and when I say prevailing narrative, I don't mean about like woke this and that. I mean the prevailing narrative that it's a sinking ship, right? But in terms of a convergence of factors, well, I think the strike played a big role because this is a movie that really would have benefited from not just talk show appearances, but like, here's the whatever, the autocorrect survey, or all the shit that we see actors do, like the promotional stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like on YouTube.
Yep.
Like, oh, here's the career timeline or whatever, all this stuff,
Yeah.
All of that would have helped, or being able to go on TikTok. I mean, Iman Vellani. Yeah, I think all of that. I think she's just such a joyful presence. I think she could have really helped get the word out. I feel like they lost out on like. Maybe not a ton, but I don't think it's unreasonable to think that $5 to $8 million was left on the table because of the strike.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. Well, and also our friend Bushra, she reached out to me and Federica about seeing it, and my reply was, "That's this week." So there you go. There's a little bit of that too.
For me, honestly, the smile on my daughter's face was enough for me to be like, "Nah, it's fine." This movie's gonna mean something very different for her,
Yes, and that cannot be like discounted.
Yeah. And also, just going back to what I was saying before, I'm actually, as we record this, it's heading into its second week, and I'm actually very curious to see what kind of a drop it has, because I think that's what's going to tell the tale.
What comes? Oh, the Hunger Games. I think
Hunger Games this weekend. Yeah. It's there was a lot of like it opened even worse than The Flash. How is that possible? And I'm Brian. I swear, I feel like you and I are on this island. We're like, I don't know, I kind of like The Flash,
Dude. I know. That's like my immediate response when I hear The Flash. Like, I don't think it was that bad. Like,
I liked it. I still like it.
Yeah.
But anyway, let us know your thoughts on the Marvels. You can email us at moviefilmpodcast@gmail.com. You can also hit like on our Facebook page, facebook.com/moviefilmpodcast, and message us there. You can also do lots of things. You can do whatever you want. I believe in you. I was going somewhere with this. I completely lost my train of thought. If you're looking for me on social media, there we go. I'm on X, aka Twitter, at Zacky's Corner. I'm also on Threads and Blue Sky and Instagram. Just do a search for Zacky's Corner. You'll find it. There's the AKIS Corner. Also, you can go to San Francisco Chronicle and read my review of Monarch, Legacy of Monsters, and go to The Wrap and read my review of Lawman, Bass Reeves, and also my remembrance of Matthew Perry, which Brian helped me with, by the way.
Oh yeah, well, you just had me give a pair of eyes to look over, and yeah. I mean, it was already beautifully written when I read it.
I appreciate that. Thank you. That was actually it was like I get to like show Brian what I do. It was like exciting for me.
Honestly, I was pretty giddy that you included me. So.
But yeah, you helped me out with that. So if you go to The Wrap, you can check that out. And Brian, what do you have going on?
Well, just a couple days ago, new episodes of Young Jedi Adventures dropped on Disney Plus, and it is a really fun batch of episodes. So I would encourage people, especially with young kids, that you want to get into Star Wars and have them excited about the Force and lightsabers and prepare them to love the movies like you do. Go check out Young Jedi Adventures. It's on. It airs on Disney Junior, and all those episodes are on Disney Plus.
And there you go. And with that, on behalf of my partner, Brian Hall, this has been Movie Film 279. We'll catch you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Welcome, friends. It's the Movie Film Podcast. Movie Film Podcast. Enjoy the show. Zachy and Brian are talking about the movies. Movie Film Podcast on the radio.
David's Bridal, where brides and bridesmaids get fabulously dressed. We let our friends pick out what we wear, show off our dance moves, obsess over every little detail, hold your hand through it all, smile bravely when it's time to let go, make your dreams come true. The things we do for love, only at David's Bridal.